Welcome to today's webinar on nutrition and energy balance. I'm Jack Latus, CEO of the Latus Group. By being here and supporting these webinars, you're helping us on our mission to improve the health of every employee in every workplace. Today, we're joined by the CEO of the Edge Nutrition. Edge are one of the world leading nutrition businesses working with professional athletes and world leading organizations. And today we're joined by their CEO, Dr. Scott Robinson. On a personal note, I'm really excited to have Scott here today. Not just because I want some tips on how to improve my energy levels in the afternoon, but actually because of the alignment in the ethos between the Edge Nutrition and Latus. Some of you may or may not know, but Latus actually started in the field of strength and conditioning for elite athletes. That's where we started. We were training professional athletes, Olympians, boxers, footballers, rugby players. And it was after a few years that we then decided to take that model for improving human performance and take that into the workplace. Just want to finish by saying a massive thank you for joining us today. And I'll now hand over to Dr. Scott Robinson. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. And good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for taking the time out of what I'm sure is a busy day and tuning into this presentation. So as Jack mentioned, my name is Scott Robinson. Often forget I'm a doctor sometimes. I just like to go by the name of Scott. And I'm the founder of a company called the Edge HPL. The HPL stands for Health, Performance and Lifestyle. And we're very fortunate to support quite a lot of elite athletes across different sports and organizations, helping to optimize both their performance and their overall health as well. So mainly we probably work across Formula One, elite level boxing, as well as supporting some Olympians and professional footballers across different leagues, some of which are at the Euros now. So 10 to Hook's time, and I think I've definitely gained a few more grey hairs since watching England at the Euros, let's just say that. But overall kind of, I spearhead the company. We've got an amazing team of physiologists and nutritionists who support our clients. But we also do some work in the business, in the corporate space, supporting either executives or companies and organizations as a whole, as a part of their well-being policies and strategies to help employees improve their nutritional habits for the benefit of their work performance, but also their everyday life and lifestyle as well. So a real pleasure to be presenting to you, and also a huge thanks to Jack Davinia and all of the lovely team here at Latus Group for the invitation to speak. So moving on. I've actually split this talk into 3 sections. Part of the challenge actually was trying to unpick the experience and learnings of working with lots of really cool people over the years and put it into a 30-minute presentation. But I will try and keep it at 30 minutes to make sure that we've got enough time left over for some good questions and hopefully I can provide good answers. The basis of this talk is really to talk through the philosophies that high performers adopt with their nutrition. I probably won't go into too many specifics of exactly what you should eat and why you should eat it. But I think, if you guys do have any questions at the end, I'd be really happy to take them and can stay as long as you like. But for this talk, I think first of all, it's really important to start with the why. So health and performance nutrition, the food that you eat on a daily basis, your food habits, etc. Why is this important? Why does it matter, both now and also in the future as well? Then we'll touch upon some of the current challenges that I'm sure many of you might face, but we definitely see in practice. We have quite a lot of clients coming to us, and we seem as a society to be faced with certain nutritional challenges, particularly as it relates to the information that's out there, and how we can actually make good sense of that information to make better, more informed choices with the food and drinks that we consume. And then finally, we'll go on to some practical tips. So a few key things that elite athletes will do that I think most people can do as well to improve their nutrition for the benefit of their health and performance. And we'll move on to that finally. So moving on now. So you may be thinking, well, I'm sat here, I'm not an elite athlete, what relevance does this have to me? I will caveat that and say I am absolutely not an elite athlete. I might train here and there, try and keep myself relatively fit. But I think, as Jack touched upon just before, I really truly believe that everybody is a high performer in their own right. So whether you want to be a high performing, colleague, parent, friend, high performing at work, high performing in sport perhaps, and maybe you're taking up a couch to 5K, or you're about to embark on a marathon and you signed up to the London Marathon next year maybe. The foods that you choose to consume on a daily basis can have a really profound impact on various different areas of your life. And the way that I usually try and get clients to think about this is it can benefit you now, but also it can benefit you for many, many years to come. And that's actually highlighted on the next slide here, where we take a look at some of the ways in which good nutrition can influence overall health and performance. So I won't pick my way through all of these because I know the presentation will be recorded as well for people to watch and listen back. But I think the food that you choose to consume on a daily basis can influence so many different areas of your life. So whether that's your immune system and your immune health and your ability to fight off disease or reduce your susceptibility to disease and illness, unquestionably the foods that you eat on a regular basis will impact that. One probably quick myth buster early on is that you see a lot of marketing claims about boosting your immunity. That there is no real way to boost immunity per se, but what you can do is you can encourage a healthy immune system. So nutrition, as we relate this to athletes, is a really powerful tool to keep them available for as long as possible, to enhance athlete availability in the workspace. That might relate to less sick days, less days off work, for example. So it's about protecting a healthy immune system to prevent the risk of becoming ill, and also then reducing the number of days that you are ill for. So what we aim for with the athletes and also the corporate clients that we work with. Aside from that, nutrition can influence physical energy, mental energy, cognitive performance. Longevity is a word that's getting a lot of traction lately. So it can influence your overall how long you live. But I think perhaps maybe more important than that is looking at how nutrition can enhance overall quality of life. And what we know from the research is that yes, people in general are living longer, but actually the amount of time that people are spending in poor or ill health is actually increasing. So how can we use nutrition and food as a tool to protect or increase longevity, but also improve quality of life for as long as possible? So moving on to the next slide now. When an elite athlete might approach us and we first start working together, perhaps one of the first questions is, what supplements should I be taking to improve my performance? We will usually flip that on its head. Supplements, as we'll come on to a bit later on, do play a somewhat important role in athletic performance. But actually, the real fundamentals of high performance are built on a foundation of good health. And I think that's applicable to elite athletes, but it's also applicable to pretty much anybody. That's exactly what we focus on with all of the elite athletes. And looking in from the outside, you might think that, it's very marginal gains, especially in the likes of Formula One, where, half a second can be the difference between first and 10th place, maybe. And there might be very specific foods that we'll have at very specific times to help tease that out. But actually, what really matters most is that we're eating well to best protect an athlete or a client's overall health. So health is the foundation of high performance, 100%. And we also look to optimize current health, but also look at implementing strategies that we know will help to protect future health and reduce future risk of disease also. I think one of the key ways to look at food as well is, if you look at how many meals on average somebody might consume over the course of a day. Typically, it's 3 meals: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. When you extrapolate that over a year, that presents an athlete, or anybody for that matter, with over 1,000 opportunities to kind of fuel and nourish their best self. And that actually doesn't even include things like snacks or drinks or hydration, etc. So across the course of a year, there's such huge opportunity to improve various aspects of health and performance. So really, it's about tapping into those opportunities and, embracing that and seeing, okay, how many of these opportunities can we win across the course of a year? But I think with that, we, particularly in this landscape of social media, etc., we're presented with quite a few challenges in the space, and knowing what's best to eat and what foods are best for a particular individual, but then also, how do we actually implement that into practice and turn it into a way of life? I think that's one of the biggest challenges that, even elite athletes face, but also as a society, it's becoming increasingly more prevalent that we are exposed to quite a lot of information. And that's actually presented on the next slide, where one of my favorite quotes is from E.O. Wilson, who said that we are drowning in information while starving for wisdom. And I think even as a nutritionist, and I've been practicing now for over 15 years, there's so much that we see online, often quick fixes, quick hacks, etc., that are very well marketed, quite tempting, but often can cause more confusion than clarity. That's what we find with clients anyway. No matter who we work with, a lot of the time we're essentially a filter of information for them to help them make smarter choices more wisely, and also in a way that fits within their unique lifestyle. I think there's a big problem within the industry. It is, a lot of bold nutritional claims are out there, but does it actually do what it says on the tin, and is it right for that individual? And ultimately, that leads to a paradox of choice, which is where you can see on this chart here that to an extent, a small number of choices with anything, let alone nutrition, can be beneficial and can increase happiness. But actually, having too many choices can lead to choice overload, and it can actually reduce happiness and reduce results. And I think that's what we see, is that quite a lot of the time, clients might be swaying in the wind, moving from one dietary approach to the next, and then trying this and then trying that. And it can lead to quite a lot of, it can be quite disheartening for clients, to be honest. But also we're faced with challenges such as conditioning, which I don't actually know where I got this image from, but it's essentially biting off more than we can chew and looking for instant gratification. One of the big things that we focus on at the Edge, with whether it's an athlete client or a corporate client or a lifestyle client, is trying to find a system and a framework that somebody can follow, where they know what's best for them relative to their short, medium, and long-term goals, but also it turns into a way of life, because we know that with certain approaches, particularly extreme approaches with nutrition, it's very unlikely to last. And I think that's the real challenge for the industry and the experts within the industry, is to try and find solutions that help people to eat well or eat better, but do it in a way that they can enjoy and they can sustain over the long term. And it doesn't feel like a diet per se. And actually, the word diet, or the term diet, is actually defined as the foods that you eat on a habitual or regular basis. So oftentimes we might hear the word diet and we might think, it means cutting out foods or restricting certain foods or trying to lose weight. In actual fact, the word diet is simply the foods you eat on a regular basis. And interestingly, with diets, there was some interesting research that came out not so long ago over in the US, which surveyed a large population of people, and found that on average, the average American will try 126 different diets across the course of their lifespan, which to me was just, absolutely mind-blowing. And it makes me think, why are these things not sticking, or why are they not working? and why are they not helping people over the long run? Another thing that we know is that a lot of people can successfully lose weight, but actually keeping that weight off is a huge challenge. And again, I think that's where trying to find the right systems and frameworks and turning something into a way of life, it is incredibly important and beneficial to clients and to anybody in general. Also, as it relates to diets, I think that we see lots of diets out there, such as, I get asked quite a lot by people about the likes of keto diets, paleo, intermittent fasting. There's been quite a big craze, especially in combat sports, about going through a 24 to 48 hour water fast, let alone some of the other diets that are out there, such as low carb. And you can see on the chart here that this is what typically happens. I would honestly say probably 99 times out of 100 is that somebody will start a new diet. They'll think, right, I want to go from 0 to 100, change, the way in which I'm eating quite profoundly. You get a peak of inflation, and then after not very long, usually 1 to 4 weeks, you'll see the expectation just drops off massively, because either it's not science backed, or it's just unsustainable over the long term, and then you end up back at square one. And that can be really, really frustrating for people. And I think, generally speaking, I think the industry has to do much better at bringing out credible, evidence-backed advice to support people, not just helping them to understand, what is best to eat, but also how do we successfully implement that over the long term with people. That's the golden nugget. I think that's the real challenge, and anybody who can crack that on a mass scale, I'd certainly give a hat tip to. Just a few details about diets as well. So we get asked quite a lot about what's the best diet to follow. I actually think there's no right or necessarily wrong answer to this. I think the privilege that we have at the Edge is that we get to work with clients on a one-to-one basis. But what we typically find is common across different diet types is that they create an energy deficit. So they allow you to eat less calories than you burn, which naturally leads to weight loss, irrespective of what type of diet or dietary approach that you follow. They might eliminate some food groups as well. So, previously there was headlines saying that dietary fat is bad for you and we should avoid fat. Then it was carbohydrates are the devil and we should be avoiding carbohydrates. And commonly they're only effective over the short term, and they lack nutrient density. For example, we know that carbohydrates are important for exercise performance. They're one of the main fuels to fuel moderate and high intensity exercise, so really important for athletes. But also, I think people who perhaps aren't athletes shouldn't restrict carbohydrates for a number of reasons. Firstly, if you choose high quality carbohydrates, they're a really important source of various nutrients, but in particular fiber. And we know that fiber is really beneficial for gut health, mental and physical energy, as well as keeping you fuller for longer. But also what we see when people do go on low carbohydrate diets is that they may step on the scales and take a weight and they think, right, I'm not happy with this weight that I'm at now. I'm going to go on a low carb diet. I'm going to cut out carbohydrates completely. And then after a week or 2 weeks, they will step back on the scales and they might see that they've lost 5, 6, perhaps 7 or more kilograms. So great, it must have been carbohydrates that were the problem. Now, when you look at the basic physiology and biochemistry involved in carbohydrate metabolism, you understand that to store 1 gram of carbohydrate in the body, you need 3 grams of water to attach to that carbohydrate. So overall, if you put in, say, 30 grams of carbohydrates, maybe you have some rice, for example, or pasta, attached to that will be 90 grams of water, which means your total weight that's gone into the body and is holding is 120 grams. Now, when you cut out carbohydrates, your body will lose that water that's being attached to the carbohydrate, and you will then lose a greater amount of body weight. That is not necessarily reflective of total body fat lost, but it is reflective of the weight that's been lost from your overall body, and more than the carbohydrate is reflective of the water that you've lost from the body. Then as soon as you go to put carbohydrates back in, and you say, after you've gone low carb for a certain period of time, you put the carbs back in and you'll gain weight pretty quickly, and you think, oh, it must have been those damn carbs. It must be that. But in actual fact, it's not, provided that you focus on high quality carbohydrates. They're a really important part of the component of the diet, and also having carbohydrates at the right times, which we'll come on to shortly. Whenever a new client or an existing client comes to me and says, oh, I'm thinking about trying out this dietary approach, or perhaps taking this supplement or this shake, I will always ask them the question and ask them to reflect and say, do you think this is a short-term way but a long-term failure? If you won't be able to stick to this over the long term, there's probably no point in trying it now. That's the mindset that we try and get our clients to adopt, so that they become a little bit more intuitive and autonomous with their choices. And as I mentioned before, we really like to turn it into a way of life with food, where people can actually enjoy food and not be fearful of it, which I also think is really important, to have a great relationship with food. In terms of solutions and practical tips, don't mean to be too negative by focusing on some of the problems. Hopefully some people can relate to that though, myself included at times. But I'd like to now give some practical tips for what the world's best athletes focus on. So on the next slide, a lot of athletes have been really interesting working with different athletes, different teams, different organizations. One consistent trend with athletes is that they typically have a very small support team around them of trusted people and trusted advisors. So they will actually take advice from a very small number of people. So for whether it's a Formula One driver or a football or a boxer, they won't be taking nutrition advice from social media, blogs, friends, colleagues. They won't have 4 or 5 nutritionists who they're working with, because that creates more confusion than it does clarity. They will actually take advice from a very, very small number of people. And luckily for us, we are the trusted nutrition advisor to a variety of different athletes across different sports. And they might see something and they might come to us and say, hey, Scott, or hey, somebody within the team, what do you make of the 24-hour water fast? And we can talk it through with them and give them a pretty clear-cut answer. And I think that's really important for anybody, is to, especially with how social media is at the moment and general media, is to almost not take advice from everything that you see or everybody that you speak to. And where you can, try and find somebody who is trusted, credible, reliable, to kind of lean on for nutrition advice. That way you'll have much more clarity and direction with your nutrition, and also be able to work with someone who understands you as a person, your unique goals, your challenges, etc., rather than looking online and thinking, I might try this or I might try that, and because it's going to leave you swaying in the wind. So number one is that's what athletes will first and foremost focus on, is getting a small number of the right people around them. Secondly, they will focus on small improvements over time. I will caveat that and say that sometimes if there's a world championship coming up, we might look to make some larger changes to a particular nutrition strategy or plan. But for the most part, they will look to make small incremental improvements over time, rather than trying to change everything at once. I think that's the one thing that's probably surprised me the most about elite athletes, is that they are all or nothing, but also they're very strategic and sensible in picking up new things to improve their health and performance. They tend to be creatures of habit to an extent, and if the reward is greater than the risk, then they will try something new or a new strategy, etc. And I think that's what most people can do as well in nutrition. Especially, it's very tempting to go and try a new diet or try a new range of products, for example, thinking that it's going to work wonders and stick over the long term. But in actual fact, it's very, very rarely the case. So I'm sure that many of you are aware of the good work of James Clear and the Atomic Habits book, where he talks about just getting 1% better each day, and how tiny changes can lead to remarkable results. And that's depicted in the chart here, where you can see that over the course of a year, if you get 1% better with something, by the end of the year, you'll be 37 times better. And that's known as the compound effect. That's what we focus on with athletes, with corporates, with anybody who we work with, is just helping them to get better or a little bit better each day, working towards their goals. It's really, really important. It's much easier. There's less pressure on people as well, but also it allows you to track tangible change over time, and generally keeps morale quite high, rather than the peaked inflation and then the disillusionment that can happen with certain diets. So it's a big thing that we focus on. It is looking at that consistency over intensity. I think that's really, really important. Moving on. As an example of some habits that you can adopt, and I've just picked out 3 here that our elite athletes will focus on, but also, to be honest, anybody can focus on. So example 1 is a glass of water, next to a toothbrush. So we know that the athletes and most people are creatures of habit. They will typically take the path of least resistance. So how do we help them to incorporate new beneficial habits into their daily routine that we know can benefit them? This is a great example. Example number 1, it's pretty much as simple as it gets. And that is having a glass of water before you brush your teeth in the morning time to promote rehydration. So this is quite powerful in a couple of ways, because we know that, after sleeping for, say, between 7 and 10 hours, if we're lucky, we will progressively become more dehydrated overnight, particularly in the summer, warmer conditions. So actually kickstarting the day with a positive habit can help increase the likelihood of adopting more favorable habits throughout the day, particularly as it relates to nutrition. But also helping to kickstart the rehydration process can really work wonders for early morning fatigue, time to kind of feel properly awake and alert, as well as, things like skin health, mental energy, productivity, etc., etc. So what's a simple way in which we can try and encourage people to kickstart the hydration? Well, we know that most people in the morning time hopefully brush their teeth pretty much soon after waking up. So what we can do is we can habit stack, and we can also leave a cue. So habit stack is putting a new habit with an existing habit. So, for example, existing habit, brushing your teeth; new habit, leave a glass of water by your toothbrush to remind you to drink a glass of water. Also, that acts as a cue, because if you've got your toothbrush there and you've put your glass or your water bottle next to it, that is a cue to remind you to do the habit. So again, path of least resistance, habit stacking, cues, etc. These things can be really beneficial. And there's hundreds of examples we could give with this to help people implement new positive habits into their daily routine, that also don't take up too much mental energy as well. Example number 2 is looking at snacks, for example. So if, say, for example, you have a banana at lunchtime or mid-afternoon, or mid-morning or mid-afternoon, then to pair that with either like a high quality source of protein and or a high quality source of fats. Why is this beneficial? Well, we know that bananas are healthy. They're a good source of high quality carbohydrate, potassium, magnesium, etc. But there are some sugars in there. And actually, if you're relatively sedentary at the time and you're sitting down and maybe you're doing office-based work, what you don't want is for that sugar to go in to cause a glucose spike, and then for the glucose to dip, and afterwards you feel maybe a little bit more lethargic and your energy levels go down. A simple hack to that is to pair that carbohydrate source with some fats and or some protein. So some nuts or some Fage or Skyr yogurt, for example. That actually really helps to smooth the glucose response, so you get more sustained energy levels over the next 2 to 3 hours until your next snack or your next meal. Example number 3 is probably the most powerful, and I don't think it's talked about enough. And that is the effect of going and doing some light activity before or ideally after a main meal. So whether that's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, if you can find a way of getting moving, it doesn't need to be anything intense, but something like going for a light walk for 5 minutes, or even getting up and maybe doing the dishes straight away. Whatever you like, just some form of movement before, but ideally after a meal, can really help to improve the glucose response to the meal. So you don't get a big spike and then a dip and a crash in energy. But what the research shows is that it can actually lead to better overall metabolic health outcomes over time. That's not to say that you can't, you have to do it after every single meal, but I think trying to do that as often as possible is a really good hack, to help your current physical and mental energy levels, but also your, future risk of cardiometabolic or adverse cardiometabolic health outcomes. So moving on to the next slide. Movement snacks. So I get asked quite a bit about what's the best type of exercise to lose weight, to feel better, to get lean, various different types of goals. For me, in its simplest form, I think that a combination of aerobic-based exercise, resistance training, doesn't necessarily mean you have to lift really heavy weights. It can be something quite simple, such as body weight exercises or low weight weights. And then also mobility work is the key to longevity and improving overall quality of life, undoubtedly. But actually, what's also really powerful, and especially on the days where you might struggle to do some scheduled physical activity, is to look at how much you're moving around throughout the day and how active you are, and trying to fit in what we call movement snacks. So movement snacks are something that you can do either, every couple of hours in the office, get up, go for a walk, set an alarm to remind you, do it with a friend, have an accountability partner to do that, before or after meals, for example. Anything that can get the body moving, it doesn't need to be intense, can really have a really positive impact over time on energy levels, physical and mental health, cardiometabolic health as well. But I think a lot of the time people think we need to go and do a scheduled workout at the gym or something really, really intense to get the benefits. It's absolutely not the case. There is merit to that, but it's not the be all and end all. And actually getting in some movement throughout the day generally can have a profound impact. The mindset, I think, and the way to look at it is everybody has a bad day. Even elite athletes have a bad day sometimes, and they just don't feel like doing anything. That's fine. We're all human. We're not perfect. Even top level footballers or F1 drivers or whoever it might be are not perfect. Hopefully they won't shoot me down for saying that. But it's actually looking at what you do over, whether it's movement or nutrition, what you do over the course of a day, a week, a month, a quarter, a year, that ultimately has the most impact. That's what's absolutely key to have in mind and to think about at all times. The more times you can get movement snacks in, cool. If you miss a day, no problem. But if you got 3, 4, 5 days in the week and you got some movement snacks in, great. That's a win. That's an improvement, perhaps on the previous week or the previous month. Just on to the next slide. In terms of nutrition itself, and what we focus on with athletes, and I think is really important for anybody to focus on, even non-athletes, is this pyramid here. So as I mentioned before, sometimes athletes, people in general, might come to us and say, okay, what's the supplement that I can take to get me a quick win or a quick fix or improve this quickly? In actual fact, we tend to focus on supplements last. They're way less of a priority than anything else within an athlete's diet or a client's diet. And really, we only use them to correct any deficiencies that we can't maybe correct through food or special cases. Perhaps probably vitamin D, especially in the UK, is the one that we will recommend almost year round, with the exception of the summer months for most people, because most people are deficient in vitamin D throughout pretty much most of the year. But aside from that, at the very base here, and the most important thing that we focus on is having or helping people to consume a rich variety of whole, high quality foods. It's not particularly sexy. It doesn't sell books. It's pretty bland and boring. It's probably something that you've heard 1,000 times over, like, it's really important to eat fruit and veg. But when it comes to the world's best high performers, that is our number one priority. That is the foundation of good health and performance. Second to that is, the three, we call it the 3 T's of nutrition. So the total amount of food, the types of foods that are being consumed, and then also the timing of that food as well. So the total amount, we'll look at, okay, what is the athlete doing across the course of a day, or the individual? What are their energy requirements? How much food or calories should they be consuming there or thereabouts on any particular day? Then we'll look at the type of food. So we'll typically include, as I mentioned, a wide variety of foods, but obviously we'll look at the 3 major macronutrients: carbohydrate, fat, and protein, and we'll look to periodize those relative to the athlete's training schedule and demands. In terms of things like protein requirements, we will usually recommend that an athlete on any given day consumes between or around about 1.6 grams per kilogram of their body mass per day of protein. So for a 70 kilo individual, that equates to around about 100 or so grams of protein. There's a big craze at the moment about protein and how great protein is for you for various reasons, and that is true to an extent, but we don't go super high protein because the research shows that it doesn't, after a certain level, more protein isn't always better. And if you're focusing on protein, you're typically not focusing as much on carbohydrates and fats, which we know are important for overall health and performance as well. In terms of fats, and I'd recommend this to most people, we typically recommend about 1 gram per kilogram body weight per day. So again, for a 70 kilo individual, it's about 70 grams of fats per day. Obviously, we want to look at the quality of those fats. So ideally, mainly comprised of poly and monounsaturated fats. A little bit of saturated fat tends to get a bad rep, especially in the evening time. A high intake of saturated fat we know can impair sleep quality, but it's not the be all and end all if some is included in the diet. And then trans fats we just try and eliminate as best as possible. And then with carbohydrates, we adopt an approach called fuel for the work required. So we think, okay, we've hit our protein targets, we've hit our fat targets, what's left? So what is the athlete doing today? Is it a particularly busy day, training once, training twice, training 3 times? What are their carbohydrate and fuel requirements? And we'll fuel for the work required. So we'll periodize the carbohydrate intake and the amount of carbohydrates that athletes have relative to the energy demands of the day. And that's one thing that I think that most people can, or an approach that most people can adopt, is when it comes to carbohydrates, I don't think many people would benefit from going completely zero carb, but actually including some high quality carbohydrates in the diet, even on a relatively sedentary day. A small amount of high quality carbs with each meal can be beneficial, can also keep you happy and sane. But then on days where you are more active, to consume a little bit more carbohydrate to compensate for that as well. Even people who need to lose weight or would like to lose body fat, we still include plenty of carbohydrates in the diets for various reasons. Just moving on to the next slide. Just one example here of looking at food quality and variety. I just did a little side-by-side comparison here of a croissant and a latte. Totaled up the calories. If you were to go to Starbucks and get a quick breakfast in the morning time, you get a croissant and a latte, you're looking at around about 700 calories combined. That's the equivalent of about 2 McDonald's cheeseburgers, for context. But actually you're getting very little out of that from a nutrition perspective. Whereas, we've got some amazing creative chefs within the company who can create all different types of recipes that are really quick and easy to make. And there's one here that I picked out, which is probably a client favorite, which is the caramel hazelnut chia pudding. Literally takes 5 minutes to make. You can make it the night before, you've got it there for in the morning time, or you can make it in the morning if you like. 450 calories, much higher in protein, much higher in healthy fats, some slow release carbohydrates as well. But don't forget as well, the fat and the protein will help to smooth that release of carbohydrates into the bloodstream, so you get a more sustained release of energy throughout the morning time. So, but there's a really high nutrient density to that chia pudding compared to the croissant. Now, that's not to say never have a croissant and a latte. Even as a nutritionist, I have been victim to grabbing a quick breakfast on the go. I'll probably feel the effects of it in a couple of hours' time when I do. But again, it's about looking at your habits over the course of a week, a month, a quarter. If a few times during that quarter or the month you had croissant and a latte, it's probably not too much of an issue. But if those kind of things become a feature of the diet over healthy whole foods and a diverse range of foods and nutrients, that's when it can become a little bit more of an issue. I also think that we talk a lot to clients about putting too much pressure on themselves with their nutrition. And a couple of years back, we ran an initiative to help younger people and generations with their nutrition and helping them to form really positive nutrition habits and just learn more about what high performers do with their nutrition, and what the advice that they would have for younger generations as well, who are either looking to achieve in sports or in school or wherever it might be. As a part of this, we interviewed loads of different athletes and coaches and cool people, a lot cooler people than me. One of which was Troy Deeney, and he just had this really powerful message, which is something he was quite open about, where he said he used to, in the past, he'd have a treat like a McDonald's, and then he felt like after he had that, he needed to go on the exercise bike to burn off those calories, and thinking that he'd made a big mistake. We worked with Troy, or I worked with Troy for a few years towards the back end of his career. And we talked about this quite a lot. And actually, one bad meal or one bad snack or even one bad day, if you go to a wedding, for example, or you just have a bad day at work and you feel like you need something, less healthy, that's okay. But it's actually what you do around that has a more important impact, especially over time. So the purpose of this is, there's a lot of pressure on people these days in work, in life, to look good, feel good, so much information online. I'd really just recommend everybody to, not put too much pressure on themselves and look at the bigger picture. And if, for example, you do have maybe a day of making poorer nutrition choices, just come back from that and think, okay, well, how can I correct this the next day, or how can I eat well around it? It's a really good mindset to have. And I actually think it's a really healthy mindset to have. If you're too restrictive and too strict on yourself, it's not good for physical health. It can cause more stress, which can cause more problems, but also mental health as well. And even the world's best athletes, they will have treats per se from time to time and certain meals, and we actually really encourage them to do it, especially if they're out of camp or we know they've not got an important competition. We will say, I have been for a pizza with athletes and said, enjoy it, go forth and conquer, and have this, because I know that over time it doesn't make too much of a negative impact, but also it's there's this huge social aspect to food as well that's really important to consider. Final couple of slides now. So I think also it's important for us to be aware of marketing hype and food labels. It astounds me what companies can get away with sometimes, especially these days with marketing hype. So I think it's really important to take those things with a pinch of salt. There's some really bold claims out there. But again, I think that with certain products, they're probably, even if they are research backed, which to be honest, very few are, at least rigorously scientific backed, then, I think they're not going to be a magic bullet. For example, the Zoe gut health shot, it's not bad. I don't think poorly of Zoe at all. Nothing against the company, but you can't expect to take a gut health shot and then think that, okay, well, that's going to solve everything to do with my gut and I've now got a healthy gut microbiome. It just doesn't work like that. What really matters with, in particular, gut health is the quality and the diversity of the foods that you eat on a regular basis, particularly trying to incorporate more plant-based foods in the diet, which Zoe do a great job of promoting. But from the perspective of seeing things as quick fixes, I usually don't buy into those at all, and our clients don't either. Also looking at food labels. So for example, one thing that we will teach clients is to don't need to understand every food label, but just getting a general understanding of how food labels work can be really interesting, or at least I think so as a nutritionist. If you look at Weight Watchers here and you look at their wafers, but then actually if you look on the back of the wafers, calories per 100 grams are, say, 500 calories per 100 grams. But then you go and look at a bar of dairy milk and the calories are around about 500 calories per 100 grams. But it's just that in the Weight Watchers version, there's less of the product. So the actual weight of the product is much less, but actually gram for gram, the calories in these things, whether it's a lighter yogurt or a lighter crisps or lighter chocolate, tend to be exactly the same. So we've just got to be aware of marketing claims. A great example here would be Muller Light as well, the yogurts. Again, nothing against Muller in particular, but this is probably the last yogurt that I would choose. Yeah, granted, it does taste pretty good, but really high sugar content, very low protein content, low fat content as well. So actually all it is just a big carb sugar spike after having it that probably won't leave you feeling full for long, might lead to an energy spike and then an energy crash. In actual fact, I really prefer yogurts that are higher in fat, obviously higher in protein, but generally, they're much better for you than these lighter versions that might fill a short-term void, but actually, over the course of a few hours, or even if you consume them regularly as a part of your diet, probably won't do you much good. Also things like detox juices and cleansing diets, and kind of talk a little bit about this on the next slide. For me, this is probably the biggest kind of pet peeve that I have with the industry, and in particular the use of the word detoxing and cleansing. To be totally straight, there's no detox diet that will work, or like no detox supplement or product or drink or juice regime that you can have that will cleanse the body and rid it of toxins. That's what you have your major organs for. Your skin, your eyes, your liver, lungs, etc. They are phenomenally good at technically detoxing the body and getting rid of pollutants and toxins. The way to look after those vital organs is to do what I said before, which is to focus on a rich variety of wholesome, high quality foods, look at type, timing, total of foods as well. And also to focus on hydration. See a lot of people spend a lot of money on skincare products. Of course, no problem with that at all, but staying well hydrated throughout the day, throughout the week, is one of the best, most impactful ways that you can protect your skin health and appearance. And that simply comes down to drinking a little bit more water throughout the day, maintaining good hydration levels. So if you see anything with the word detox on it, then just try to run clear, or at least save some money. How are we doing for time? Okay. And finally, just to give some insights into metabolism and the work that we do. So we have a health and performance lab down in Surrey, where we run various tests on athletes and everyday populations to learn more about their unique physiology and metabolism, so we can personalize our nutrition advice accordingly. And one of the tests that we run is a test called the resting metabolic rate test. So sometimes we'll have clients come to us, most of the time new clients, and they'll say, I really struggle with my energy levels. I really struggle to lose weight, or I struggle to gain weight. I think I've got either a slow metabolism or a fast metabolism. There's something not quite right with my metabolism. So we will run a really simple test on them, where we'll ask them to lay down on a sofa or a bed. We'll pop a face mask on them. We will measure the gas exchange. So we'll essentially put the mask on and we can measure how much oxygen they consume and carbon dioxide they produce. And from that, after 30 minutes of lying down, we can find out pretty much to the 0.1 of a calorie how many calories their body burns at complete rest over the course of a day. And that's called your resting metabolic rate, known also somewhat as the speed of your metabolism or the health of your metabolism. There's quite a lot of text here. I do apologize for that. Don't worry about reading through it all too much. But everybody's metabolism is different. My metabolism, if I measured it now or I measured it in a year's time, a couple of years' time, it can change over time. But everybody is very different. And we have found that some people have a healthy metabolism. Some people do have a slow metabolism. Some people have a very fast metabolism. But we have never, ever seen a resting metabolic rate or a metabolism slower than 1,000 calories a day. So what that means is, of all the people we've tested, so over probably 500 people, males, females, younger, older, 40 kilos, 140 kilos, even almost the smallest and the lightest people we haven't seen a metabolism that is less than 1,000 calories a day. So that actually means that you've got your resting metabolic rate. We ask the people not to move when they're lying down and to try and not fall asleep as well. But actually anything on top of that person then does across the course of the day, whether that's exercise or brushing your teeth, showering, moving like I am now, that burns quite a significant amount more calories that you would then add on to your resting metabolic rate to work out your daily calorie requirements. So I guess the key message here is that this is why I don't like really low calorie diets, because it can actually work against your metabolism and really slow down your metabolism over time. And if we just move on to the next slide, there's a couple of reasons why I and the research thinks that is. So there's a few factors that can influence metabolism. You've got genetics, not much you can really do about that other than thank or blame your parents. But two things that really help to speed up metabolism are physical activity level and cardiovascular fitness, particularly if you have a good level of base endurance, so zone 1, zone 2 training, light exercise. If you can build that base, we typically find that people have a healthier or a faster metabolism. Doesn't necessarily always need to be really high intensity training that yields the benefits. Also muscle mass. So muscle mass or muscle is a metabolically active tissue that burns calories to exist and function every day. So the more muscle mass somebody has, generally speaking, the higher their metabolism will be. And again, that's why I don't like very low calorie diets, because you might lose weight, but actually if you're in a severe energy deficit, you will lose some body fat, but you will also lose quite a high proportion of muscle mass that then slows your metabolism right down and will make it a lot harder to either continue losing weight or to stay at that weight. So I think they're quite harmful. When I say muscle mass, a higher muscle mass is linked to a faster metabolism, doesn't mean you need to be absolutely stacked. But it means that if you can look at strategies with your nutrition and maybe your physical activity level to try and retain a good amount of muscle mass or even increase your muscle mass a touch, it can work wonders for your metabolism as well as your overall health and well-being. So just to finish on this, I think that also you see products, companies, etc., talking about metabolism boosting foods. We have never seen one that actually works. So again, similar to detox, there's no foods that can really significantly boost your metabolism. They might do over the short term. For example, if I had a Red Bull or an energy drink now, my heart rate would go up, my metabolism would increase a bit, but that would probably soon subside, and really I might end up burning a couple more calories throughout the day, but nothing of significance. So if you do see anything that is metabolism boosting, just take it with a pinch of salt. Hopefully I've not gone too much over time. There's enough time left for questions. And yeah, thank you everybody for listening in. I hope you found it useful.